All right, we're here with more breaking news around the NFL. Javon Hargrave, the number 3 player on the PFF free agent board, signing with the San Francisco 49ers. It's 4 years, $84 million. We didn't know exactly where Hargrave was going to land, but he's going to the Niners, a team that already has Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead. They love building that defensive line. So what are your initial thoughts here, Sam?
Yeah, surprise team, I guess, is the first initial thought. The 49ers, I don't think, were a team that a lot of people expected to be in this Javon Hargrave sweepstakes, who was a guy we did think would get some of the biggest money getting thrown around today, one of the highest graded free agents out there, one of the top-ranked guys on our free agent board. But the 49ers are now another one of those teams. We were talking about Washington on the podcast this morning. How do they pay everybody? They were already paying their defensive line basically the most amount of money of anybody in the NFL. That was before they bring in Hargrave. And, you've got potential deals upcoming. Like, wow, that's an indication of just how much they value getting pressure with front four.
What's funny is they trade away DeForest Buckner, who signed a 4-year, $84 million contract with the Indianapolis Colts, take Javon Kinlaw, and now bring Hargrave in on the same contract. Like you said, potentially spending $70 million per year if Nick Bosa gets the $30+ million per year deal we're expecting, and then Eric Armstead at $17.5. So it's always been their priority, and they're clearly continuing to invest in the defensive line.
We've talked a lot about teams that have first contract quarterbacks. That's the buzz phrase, right? When you're able to do that, you can overspend other places. How much of that is now a factor? Jimmy Garoppolo's off the books. How do teams view this? Is that, hey, we've got this Garoppolo money freed up. We're going to have Brock Purdy, presumably, as our starter, with Trey Lance as a backup right now. So we've got that flexibility. Even with Nick Bosa coming up soon, this was a more, feasible move here for the Niners.
No, 100%. And the surgery for Brock Purdy a couple days ago, sounds like he did not get the full Tommy John, something you're probably more familiar with as a baseball guy, but a less invasive surgery. I mean, his cap hit is under $1 million next year. Yeah. So we talk about quarterback surplus with top 5 picks. This is Mr. Irrelevant. They can spend a ton outside of quarterback, and obviously they're going to do that.
Where's the tipping point now for the Niners? We used to joke about the Rams and stars and scrubs, and that is what the Niners, I'm not saying they're looking like that, but they have the stars. They have absolute star power. Trent Williams at left tackle. Christian McCaffrey's making over $16 million a year. George Kittle at tight end. Deebo Samuel. Then you have Brandon Ayuk coming up at some point. Nick Bosa coming up at some point. Fred Warner's making a ton of money. Eric Armstead, Javarius Ward, and now Javon Hargrave. That's a lot of big names and very good players. How do they make it all work?
And a lot of big contracts. I mean,
I was listing all the
keep
biggest
talking
contracts.
About, we talked before about when you get the big quarterback, you can probably afford like 5 more contracts. 5 more big contracts. And basically, the rest of the roster is going to be put together on the cheap. Well, the 49ers don't have the big quarterback contract. In fact, they've got probably as cheap as it's going to get because Mr. Irrelevant and then a rookie quarterback as their backup, albeit a top pick. So they have a lot of free room that isn't going to a $45 million quarterback, and all of a sudden you create a list that looks like that where they can really start throwing some money around, albeit for a window. But, their window is now.
It's a fair question, though. Where is the inflection point? Because it's left tackle, highest paid in the NFL, one of the highest paid tight ends in the NFL. So it's also, some premium and non-premium positions, off-ball linebacker. They have 2 guys making good money there. You can do it. You definitely can. They have this window right now, but they're probably near the end of the road of giving out these massive contracts. Ayuk due for his 5th-year option. Is he maybe next offseason a trade candidate? You start to look at the future at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you manage that if you're managing the cap for the 49ers? It's a ton of really good players. And look, we talk a lot about the NFC's wide open, and this is the time to go for it and all that fun stuff. The Niners will be a Super Bowl contender, assuming Brock Purdy's back and healthy and playing similar to last year. But, how do you manage this going forward?
I mean, to me, the great thing is, though, it's less about going forward and more about what they are attacking this right now. The AFC is this horrific landscape where everybody's a contender, but the NFC is kind of low on really good teams. I mean, last season it was basically the 49ers and the Eagles, and they met in the NFC title game, and that went south because the 49ers ran out of quarterbacks completely. So we didn't really get to see the sort of titanic battle that could have been, but the Eagles are set up again to contend. Now the 49ers are reloading to get back there right the same thing. Their entire interior defensive linemen, they used a ton of them last year. All of them outside of Armstead combined for 58 total pressures. Javon Hargrave on his own accounted for 66 pressures. So they are completely transforming that unit and pairing those guys next to Nick Bosa and, maybe Drake Jackson takes a step forward. But, that's going to be a nasty defensive front.
I did a poor job, buried the lead, which was what are they getting in Javon Hargrave? You did a good job laying that out. 90-plus pass rush grade each of the last 2 years for the Eagles. We track win rate, how often they just win as far as beating blocks, over 20% in 2021, 18% last year. Those are incredible numbers on the defensive interior. It's how the Niners like to win, which is on the defensive line.
His pass rush win rate only trailed Aaron Donald and Chris Jones last year. So you're going to get that level of money. Makes a lot of sense. It also helps for them. They had $1 billion compensatory picks. They have 11 total picks in this draft. The first one's not till 99, but you do need to add those surplus value players. Try to get some young bodies in there that are cheap to counteract all these huge deals.
Yeah, they got what, 7 additional picks?
I think it was 6 or 7. You're right,
7.
Yeah.
And including 3 third-rounders, right?
For the GM and the head coach.
Yeah, they don't pick very high in the draft, but neither is it stocked entirely with day 3 picks. Those third rounders are kind of valuable picks. They can do some damage with those draft picks.
Yeah, they have to because it's
Is that where the strategy looks a little bit like the Rams, right?
Yeah.
Where there are a ton of stars on the team making most of the money, and the underrated part of making what made the Rams strategy successful was finding starters on day 3. Finding starters in round 3, right, at linebacker, at safety, whatever it might be. Mike McGlinchey is going to be gone. At right tackle, you have to find a starter there if you're the Niners. So that's how this whole thing is going to come together, I think, is finding starters now on the cheap to go with all the stars they have on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they need to get that part of it right. I think any team does. If you're going to be one of the best teams in the NFL, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you can't just have those stars work out. The back end of the roster needs to at least hold its own, which means some variety of capable starting play. I just fired up the PFF grades just to get the totality of the last 2 seasons in PFF pass rushing grade combined. Javon Hargrave has been above 90 in each of those last 2 years. Over that 2-year period, only Aaron Donald has a higher pass rush PFF grade on the interior. So Javon Hargrave is number 2. He's ahead of Chris Jones. He's ahead of Jonathan Allen, whatever other interior defensive lineman, just Aaron Donald. So that's the kind of pass rusher they're getting.
And last year, the number 1 pass rushing grade among teams was the Philadelphia Eagles. Hargrave a big part of that. The 49ers were 7th. Wouldn't be surprised if that flipped going into 2023. The Niners look like they might have the very best pass rush in the NFL.
Yep, finally closed out to 11 sacks, first double-digit sack season. Also interesting for him, he's now played with Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt and the edge rushers in Pittsburgh, then goes to Philadelphia, plays with a bunch of guys, now going to San Francisco. He's a great player in his own right, but hey, his surroundings have been pretty great everywhere he's been.
First big domino to fall, Javon Hargrave to the Niners.